Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our Michigan Man Extra for this month. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. I'm enjoying a week off in northern Minnesota, getting the batteries recharged before we get back to weekly shows in August. Before leaving town, I had the opportunity to spend some time chatting with Tammi Carr. We all know the story of Chad Carr and his battle with DIPG. It will be 2 years this November since Chad passed away. Tammi and Jason Carr have made it their mission to raise awareness of DIPG and other forms of pediatric brain cancers that receive virtually no research money. I'm sure you have some idea about what the Chad Toug Foundation is and the work it does. We'll learn more today. The mission of the Chad Toug Foundation is to fund research and raise awareness for pediatric brain tumors with an emphasis on diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, or DIPG. Tammi Carr joins us next here on the Michigan Man on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. With us here on our Michigan Man Extra for this month is Tammi Carr, and I've invited Tammi on to, of course, talk about the battle against DIPG and other forms of pediatric cancer and the Chad Toug Foundation and its wonderful work. Tammi, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Michael.
Well, I'm certain that most of those listening to this show know Chad's story and are now more aware of DIPG, which is a word we'll use a lot during this interview, is awareness. And of course, the wonderful mission and important mission of the Chad Toug Foundation. But for the benefit of those who might be unfamiliar with this horrible form of pediatric cancer, could you tell us more about exactly what DIPG is?
Sure, no problem. DIPG it stands for diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, and it is a brainstem tumor that is diffuse in nature, so cannot be removed. It's integrated among all the good cells within the pons of the brain, which is obviously controls breathing function, basically controls everything. So it's the worst brain tumor in the worst possible location, and it has a 0% survival rate currently, and basically until recently there hasn't been much research done to change things. It's about 6 years ago. The protocol is about the same as it was for treatment back then. It is the same today. So we're really pushing to make changes in that arena, because it's a death sentence, unfortunately, when a kid receives that diagnosis.
Well, Tammi, just to give our listeners some perspective, on average in America each year, how many children are diagnosed with DIPG, and what is the average life expectancy after diagnosis?
There are about 400 children diagnosed annually, and the average survival is between 9 and 12 months post-diagnosis. And, that's a small number, but when you think about all the years that, those kids have had no chance and all of their lives lost, the number compounds pretty quickly. And in all honesty, they're checking to think, they're not sure that it is as rare anymore, too. The CDC is doing some work on trying to find out if those numbers are right or if they've grown, and, really, really trying to focus a little bit more on figuring out the details.
One of the shocking things to me was that 9 years ago, my cousin's daughter was diagnosed with DIPG over in Windsor, Ontario. So what shocked me, the treatment for a child diagnosed with DIPG is virtually the same as it was over the last 4, 5, or 6 decades. And how can you explain that?
Yeah, it's very hard to explain, and it's hard as a parent who hears that to understand how in this country that can be possible. John Glenn's daughter died from this that many years ago, 6 years ago. Yeah, or Neil Armstrong's daughter. I said John Glenn, I apologize. My father-in-law taught at John Glenn, so I guess that was Neil Armstrong's daughter. I apologize. diagnosed 60 years ago. And again, the treatment protocol that she received is virtually the same as Chad did. They say radiation and 30 rounds of that, and then you're kind of on your own to figure it out, whether you try some experimental chemo or some trial that's out there. You really, as a parent, it's up to you to determine the treatment plan for your child, which is really, really tough. And I think things there's movement in the right direction now. They've been able to start. They have tissue now. They've been able to start biopsying these tumors safely. And even just 3 years ago, when Chad was diagnosed, Chad did not get a biopsy because it wasn't determined that it was really going to do much to help, and it could be dangerous. So we didn't go that route. Well, now that's almost becoming standard procedure when someone is diagnosed because they can do it safely. And now there's also the ability to sequence these tumors and learn more about, the different mutations that exist for each tumor, because that's the thing that's hard about DIPG. The tumor, no two tumors are the same. And there's a personalized medicine approach that I think is starting to, extend the life expectancy a little bit. And so we're seeing some moves in the right direction. But having that tissue is a big thing because now we've got something for these researchers to study. And, like the Chad Toug Foundation is helping financially to do that. And there's several other family foundations working together to do the same thing and focus on this deadly tumor. Honestly, we believe that if you focus on the hardest tumor, it's going to open the floodgates for all the rest. So we're trying to push people in that direction.
And as you mentioned on the website, awareness is such a key in gaining traction in the fight against DIPG or any other form of pediatric cancer. And you just mentioned tissue donations, but we need physician and research interest and, of course, funding, the all-important funding. Are you seeing an increase of interest in those areas?
Yes, we actually are. We're focusing, the Chad Toug Foundation is focusing at Michigan we're focusing on a pediatric brain tumor initiative with a specific focus on DIPG. We are, in the process of recruiting a DIPG researcher to Michigan. There are several brilliant scientists at Michigan who are now saying, wow, there's some funding here and I have an interest, and they're starting to move in that direction. We also belong to a collaborative of family foundations that fund around the world for those that are doing DIPG. And just at Michigan, I've talked to some of the physicians there that say it used to be something where the residents would come in and they would talk to them about DIPG and, tell them what this is, and they had no clue. Well, now these young residents, fellows are coming in and saying, when do we get to learn about DIPG? So at least there's an awareness, and I think as the funding increases and the opportunity increases, there are definitely going to be more young scientists who want to get involved in this area. There's some funding, there's some momentum, and you've got a bar that's really low right now. You've got a 0% survival rate. So, you bump that up a couple percentages, and that's significant. So, I think there's a lot of room for improvement and growth.
Well, you mentioned the DIPG Collaborative and how they're impacting the fight against DIPG. Tell us a little bit about that collaborative and what they do.
Sure. I mean, we are a member of the DIPG Collaborative. What it basically is, the only people that have been funding this disease for years are families like ours who have been there and who have said this just isn't okay. So we've kind of all come together in a collaborative approach to get the best bang for our buck. And we have a medical advisory board that looks through all sorts of proposals and, narrows it down to the best opportunities. So we pool our money together to fund collaboratively. Again, when you're fighting something like this with little funding, the cumulative approach is more powerful. And all of us have been there, and we know what this is like for families, and we all are committed to doing something to change it.
Well, Tammi, after decades of really nothing, I know we have to say, until recently, now we're seeing some discoveries made about DIPG. And I was reading recently, researchers now are aware of 3 distinct subgroups that make up DIPG. How important was that discovery?
Well, it's extremely important. The mutations that exist within this tumor are complicated, and they've been able to find, those three specific mutations. And it's a starting place. You can, and because they can now take these tissue samples and they can sequence them and figure out, what child, what tumor, what mutation, they can at least try to come up with a specific treatment approach based on that mutation. We donated Chad's tumor post-mortem, and Michigan spent a year sequencing this tumor to the nth degree. And they actually came up with, there'll be a paper released soon about a mutation they found that they didn't know existed in any DIPGs. So really, it's starting from scratch and learning everything they can about these tumors to then come up with a treatment approach. And, then you have to worry about getting past the blood-brain barrier and what the right way to do that is, and, developing new, hopefully there will be some medications that exist once you know what these mutations are. I know that the mutation they found in Chad's tumor, there is, a medicine they know does impact that. So I think there are opportunities. Now, most of these tumors don't just have, by the time they got to Chad's tumor, there were over 30 mutations. So it's a smart tumor, and it fights everything you try to do. So there's not going to be one approach that works for DIPG. It's going to have to be a personalized medicine approach. I think that just even finding out about those three specific categories of tumor is a move in the right direction.
With us on our Michigan Man Extra this month is Tammi Carr, and we're talking about the fight against DIPG to find a cure and treatment, and also about the Chad Toug Foundation. And Tammi, most of our listeners know about the Chad Toug Foundation, but can you spend just a few minutes talking about the foundation, its mission, and its goal?
Yes. We started the foundation in honor of our son, Chad, who passed away from DIPG about a year and a half ago. We started foundation during his fight. We realized from day one that we had, a little bit of a platform, and we were going to use it best we could to make some change. And ultimately now that's become, we have two children on this earth and one in heaven, and his form on this earth is his foundation. So the Chad Toug Foundation is our third baby on earth. And the mission, we went back and forth on what that would be, if we would do family support or research or both. And we decided it was important for there to be a singular mission that we could focus on. And Lloyd, myself, and Jason, we are the three founding members. And we determined that research was where we needed to focus our attention, because those big dollars, that's where you can make that impact, and so it's our singular mission is research into DIPG and pediatric brain tumors. It's going very well. We've raised millions of dollars in about a couple of years, and we have lots of ways for people to get involved and make an impact with us and alongside of us. So it's been a great thing for our family to feel like we're doing something good out of this horrible situation, and doing our best to create this legacy for Chad that is going to change lives for others.
Well, that's wonderful. In March, you spent the day, Tammi, in our nation's capital, and you spoke at a congressional hearing regarding federal funding for, or the lack of, pediatric cancers, including DIPG. Did you come away from that experience more or less hopeful?
I actually walked away from it more hopeful. I was speaking to the House Oversight Committee, and it was a congressional hearing regarding the presidential proposed budget cuts to the National Institutes of Health. And, as a mom who had a child who passed away from a rare disease, to hear that they're considering cutting funding to the NIH, I just couldn't believe it. And I said, I'll do whatever you need me to do. We need more funding, not less. These rare diseases already receive basically no funding. There's a few, researchers that get a little bit. But to decrease the overall funding basically means that these rare cancers, rare diseases are going to get shut out entirely. But I walked out of there because Republicans, Democrats, all combined, every single one of them that I spoke with while I was there was against the budget cuts to the NIH. We're all going to be impacted at some point by disease, whether it's cancer or whatever it is. None of us are going to be immune to that, whether it's ourselves, our family, our children, our parents. And the NIH, the things that they fund, the research that they fund, that's what's changing the outcomes. That's what, I mean, we all need that. It should not be a political issue. It is a necessity. So I was really happy, though, to hear that it really wasn't being taken on as a partisan issue. The Republicans and Democrats were united around that those cuts were not okay. So we're hopeful that, they're going to be turned down as this budget comes together.
Well, I invite our listeners, too, to visit the Chad Toug Foundation website, where you can watch Tammi's very powerful and moving plea to lawmakers. And you are right. I hope that those budget cuts don't go through, and we need more funding. We know that. On May 17th here in Michigan, we observed DIPG Awareness Day. How important to the cause are days of observance like that?
Well, I think, we've had... That's another thing together, these foundations. We had the DIPG Awareness Day 2 years before on Chad's birthday in Michigan. But, there was a united effort amongst all of these family foundations to do it on the same day and try to get it passed along all 50 states as an awareness day. This is the first year that effort has been put in place as a joint, effort to make May 17th that date. And, we've got about 20 states on board. So it's a move in the right direction. Again, I think people, when my son was diagnosed, I'd never heard of this. And I didn't even know how to pronounce it for 2 days. And I think that, that's changing. People, I get calls all the time of, oh my goodness, my friend, my friend's son, my child, my cousin's child, they were just diagnosed, and I knew what it was because of your story, and can you help? And I think that awareness and families like ours all over being willing to share their stories and create that awareness around this disease, I think it's really important. It's important for the families who are yet to be diagnosed because they have an avenue of support, and it's also important for, funding and getting more research dollars out there.
Well, Tammi, for anyone out there listening, hearing your voice today, how can they get involved to help in the war against DIPG?
Well, one way that I think everyone can get involved, and we're really, we have a run every year on Chad's birthday weekend. And this year it falls on Saturday, September 23rd. The great thing is you don't have to be in Ann Arbor, Saline, to participate. We've started this idea of a virtual race. We have a virtual run sponsor. Bose is joining us as the virtual run sponsor this year. Last year we had at least one runner from every state across this country. And our goal is to have at least 1,000 runners this year, with a long-term goal of breaking the Guinness Book of World Records, largest virtual run. It's a small entry fee. You get your Chad Tough running shirt in the mail with a bib, and you run your race on your time, or you can join us at the same time on the 23rd. And we have people posting things on social media. The race, for those that live locally in the Ann Arbor, Saline area, is at Saline High School on the 23rd. And we usually get about 1,000 people, a little over that, locally as well. It's a way, there's fundraising opportunities around it through CrowdRise. It's a real team approach, and I think it's a great way for Michigan fans across this country to participate with their kids, participate as a family, and help create that awareness, as well as help us to raise those funds that are needed for research. And on our website, chadtough.org, you can go to our Run Tough for Chad Tough event, and it's got all the details about how to register. Would love to see a big influx from around this country of those that want to race and help us fight DIPG.
We'll get that information out on our website and, of course, on our show notes page. And I invite our listeners visit www.chadtough.org for more information on the work of the foundation and also explored the just immense amount of information there regarding DIPG. And on the site, you'll also find many ways, as Tammi just mentioned, to help support the work of this wonderful foundation. My guest today has been Tammi Carr. And Tammi, thank you so much for the gift of your time today and helping us, all understand how big the fight is to beat DIPG and other pediatric cancers. And so, you're welcome on the show anytime. And if there is anything we can do to help raise awareness of DIPG or any event the Chad Toug Foundation is involved with, please let us know.
Thanks so much for having me.
So thanks to Tammi Carr for taking time to be with us today. If you are wondering what you can do to help, visit www.chadtough.org, and you can find ways to participate, donate, and become more aware of just what DIPG is and how little research has been done to find a cure until now. I will include the contact information for the foundation in my show notes page and invite you to do what you can to help in the push to find a treatment and cure for DIPG. That will do it for this month's Michigan Man Extra. We'll be back next week with our final show of July. My guest will be Steve Lorenz from 24/7 Sports. We will, of course, have a recruiting update and talk about any other news of interest surrounding the upcoming season and Michigan football. So I hope you'll join us next week. Our free show apps are available from the iTunes and Google Play stores, and you can hear the show now on Stitcher, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. If you get us from iTunes, please take a minute to rate or review the show. Thank you in advance. Have a great Wolverine week, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Until next time, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!